As with every season, the summer 2018 anime slate is diverse. There's established sequels, anticipated manga adaptations, and daring ecchi standing in the court. So the only way to knock them out of bounds is to take ambition to the next level, and create an anime so technically incredible that it soars high over the net. This is Hanebado. But it's not a firm 21-pointer. It wins the first round only to drop points in the second and fails to reach championship level. So let's explore how Hanebado ruins its brilliance. To borrow a quote from the greatest hero of all time, you have to go beyond and plus ultra. Basically meaning to go beyond your limits. And if there is any team that embodies this mantra, it's the one led by director Izaki Shinpai over at Lead-In Films, as Hanebado is an astounding passion project. From the key animators to the in-betweens to the art and photographic direction, it's clear that everyone who works on this show wants to give 110%. Because visually, Hanebado is glorious. Whether it's a fierce match or an understated meeting, each scene feels as if it's had the same care afforded to it. And that's all down to its attention to crafts. So much so that Hanebado goes from feeling like an anime to a live-action film. Nagisa, 楽しかった. Animation isn't the only important element in making an anime, and a good director will consider every craft when piecing together their show. Anime fans single out studios like Kyoto Animation because their animation quality goes beyond what we see at other studios. But actually, the real reason they're so great is because they pay attention to every craft, which is exactly what Lead-In do with Hanebado. Want your staging to stand out? Then hire a great layout director or cinematographer. Want your show to be well paced and constructed? Then hire an editor worth their weight in gold. Want everything to run on time to the highest quality possible within budget? Then your production manager will be your saviour. And if you want to create a great anime, then hire a director who knows the importance of collaboration. Because in Hanebado, Izaki Shinpai lets everyone on his team do their job. And because of this, it takes the simple concept of a high school sports anime to the next level. And while I want to highlight how incredible the key animation is in the matches, the real standout moments for me come in the understated, quieter scenes, like the moment of realisation between lead character Nagisa and her best friend Riko in episode 6. To give a little context, Riko has just found out she'll be facing off against her old friend Nozomi at the Inter-High preliminaries. She's worried because Nozomi is insanely talented and Riko doesn't consider herself to have much talent at all. She plays off her worries to her clubmates, but on their walk home, Nagisa confronts her. Immediately your eyes are drawn to the blocking in this scene. As Seiyu Mimura Yuni delivers her lines, we can't see Riko's face, so we rely on her voice acting and subtle changes in the animation to gauge the feel of the scene. Whereas we can read Nagisa like a book because the camera always catches her face. Subsequently, the storyboard artist, editor and director have really taken care to consider the pacing. We hold on to Riko's back as Nagisa processes what to say next to her friend. She tries to offer words of comfort. There's slight hesitation and her eyes shift. It feels very human and realistic in its subtlety. And as Riko bites back to reject her words, we get this lovely close-up of her face, an instant realisation that foreshadows the next moment. The camera cuts to Nagisa standing on a higher step than Riko. This is a fantastic piece of staging. In Riko's mind throughout this anime, she has always seen Nagisa as better, a stronger player, who has more talent than she ever will. This angle is allowed to settle before we go back to Riko's face, which is once again blocked. They say the eyes are the windows to your emotions, so when we can't see them, we rely on everything else to give away feelings. Her body language is closed off, angled away from Nagisa, and as Nagisa asks her if she was lying about putting effort in for their last summer together, Riko turns back and like the frames moments before, we only ever see her reactions if she is frustrated or angry. And then we see exactly how she feels because we get a straight close-up of her eyes, and as Nagisa yells at her, she looks away. She's closed off again. Nagisa is angry, she walks off, and the inner turmoil of Riko's thoughts play out just through the animation of her mouth. The camera cuts back, Nagisa is now on the bottom step and Riko begins to talk before we cut to a different scene. I love this interaction because it's a beautiful example of craft coming together. The lighting, music, cinematography, animation, direction, scripting and editing are also on point here. This is not the first or last example either, and while I can't say this is a new thing for anime, I am appreciative when it's done to such a high standard. So this is where passion plays in, when you want to make something the best that it can possibly be, and Hanebado tries, in every frame, in every moment, in every scene, to be better than the rest. But there are blemishes in its brilliance that ruin what could have been a masterwork. Now, I'm not talking about its rotoscoping. I think it's actually rather genius they got in professional badminton players to help them construct the realities of a match, and filmed real high school badminton teams to keep with that heightened realism. Now, that realism can be a bit much. As compared to the manga, the anime is rather, well, dramatic. This is part of its aesthetic, so I don't necessarily have a problem with it. My issue is that because it tries to take itself so seriously, most attempts at humour and lightheartedness fall flat, and this comes down to its writing. The writing team use something I call shock factor in their scripts, whereby they'll change the tone of a scene without any build-up. An example comes from the character Connie, who after a fierce match is in a bath with a bunch of her teammates, and it gets a little racy. Now this happens in anime all the time, but the issue here in Hanebado is it's trying so hard to be this serious depiction of high school badminton. It brings a lot to the table, yet panders to tropes. Such as in our second example, Kauriko. Straight away her character design is so starkly different to everyone else. She looks like she's come straight out of a how to draw anime guidebook, rather than the realistic appearances of most of the other characters. And as if by design, her introduction by the beach feels so tropey that it throws off the tone of a great episode. And that shock factor can be jarring to watch and is especially noticeable as we meet Ayano. When telling a story, you want your audience to get to know your characters, especially the protagonist. And as one of the leads, we should feel like we know Ayano well as the anime progresses. Yet compared to Nagisa, I have no idea who Ayano really is. Nagisa has the benefit of true character development. Her ups, her downs, her wins, her losses, we feel them all. And as the show moves on, Nagisa grows with it. Ayano, on the other hand, is stilted. She starts off as this whiny, annoying character totally dependent on her friend Arena, and as she begins to make friends on the badminton team, we root for her. She has this lovely connection with Riko, so all things seem to be going well. Then after a meeting with another character, things change. Her personality does a 360 flip into a ditch, and all the development that was growing is knocked far out of bounds. It's not uncommon to see little growth in characters, or to hate the protagonist, but reading between the lines, this isn't the intent of the scripting. Due to Ayano's tragic backstory, we are supposed to feel for her, to want her to succeed, maybe even relish in that sadistic turn she takes, and I would if her backstory and reactions to it had been fleshed out properly. Her mother, a world-class badminton player, abandoned her at a young age. Straight away we vilify this mother figure, as who could think of leaving their child behind, but there has to be an explanation behind this, and the answer we get in the first 10 episodes makes the story rather unbelievable. Aino's mother travelled overseas, met a young girl her daughter's age, and spent her life training this other child rather than going home to her own. This seems to be because Aino was not a good enough badminton player at the age of around 8, and her mother would return when she got better. The way this is constructed and this story's narrative just feels off kilter. It doesn't work and could have benefited from further development in earlier episodes. It all comes down to that shock factor, this idea of changing tones, moods and scenes at the drop of a hat. This happens to other characters like Connie, who upon first meeting is vicious to Aino. There seems to be real hatred there, both when Connie realises who she is and in the match they have after. A few episodes later, Connie goes through a major personality transplant and suddenly wants to be the best of friends with Aino. This isn't a trick or to get one up on her, she genuinely comes across as a different person, even in her second match with Aino.
無理だよ。3人で家族になるなんてさ。
Ultimately, Hanebado's biggest issue comes down to the very first thing I mentioned in this video: ambition. It feels as if it's constantly butting heads with itself, trying to be too many things at once, and while it succeeds in so many places, it also fails in the areas that arguably matter most, ruining its brilliance. Despite that, I still think it's a great show worthy of watching, and it's one that I've got immense enjoyment out of. It's an anime that at times doesn't know quite what it wants to be, a drama almost soap opera-like in its unbelievable plot points. But there's joy to be found in its crafts and heart in its supporting cast. So at the end of the day, after all the points have been tallied and the court is cleared, Hanebado stands out as a visual wonder that could have passed the preliminaries to championship level, if only they had paid more attention to what was written in the lines, rather than flourishing what was in between.
Ku